and welcome to Community Church of Chesterland, where no matter where you are on life's journey, you are always welcome here. In the last week, there's been another mass shooting. This one was at Club Q in Colorado Springs. I didn't expect to get this emotional. There were 5 people killed. One of them I know was transgender. What I would like to do is say their name and then have everyone repeat it. Kelly Loving. Daniel Aston. Derek Rump. Ashley Pugh. Raymond Green Vance. So I want us to remember that and to remember all victims of gun violence.
Advent is from the Latin word adventus, which simply means arrival. And so the next 4 weeks are about sitting in what has been considered a season of darkness. And that darkness is what Advent represents. And it's about preparing our hearts and our minds for the symbolic arrival of Jesus. And so to commemorate this time and to push back on the encroaching darkness of winter, we light a different candle each week of Advent. The candles represent hope and joy, love and peace, and we turn our hearts to these topics in order to meditate on them more closely than we might normally through the rest of the year. So today we will, during our service, we'll light the hope candle. Next week it's the hope and love candle, and so on, until at our Christmas Eve service, which will be on Christmas Eve, we'll light all the candles, including the big candle in the middle, the big white one, which is called the Christ candle. And during this season of Advent, we'll be meeting on Wednesday evenings, as Dan said as well. And those services on Wednesdays at 6:30 will be a little bit more intimate. It won't be about like a message and that kind of thing. It'll be a little bit more meditative and introspective. And those will be on Wednesdays at 6:30. So if you're looking to go a little bit deeper into your Advent meditations, that would be a good opportunity to do so. With that, I'd like to kick off this Advent season, not with a moment of focus, but with a prayer. So if you'd all be willing to join me in prayer. We come to know you, sacred presence, as wisdom incarnate, as flickering flame, as spirit of life, as hope, as peace, joy, and love enfleshed. You come to us as the stranger and as the strange. Often we do not recognize you. Often we turn away from your gifts and your expectations of justice and mercy. Yet you come to us in the wilderness, in the darkness, in the impossible made possible, in silence and singing and sighs too deep for words. You abhor dominance, mastery, fear, and control. You are made known to us in vulnerability and courage and divesting from the powers of empire. We come to you this Advent in need, with longing, in pain, captive to fear, desiring a more just world, a more livable life for all of us, for the earth, for every living thing caught and held in this inescapable network of mutual interdependence as we call this one wild and precious life. We long for you. We long for healing. We long for liberation. We long for different systems and patterns of relating. And so this Advent, we pause, we breathe, we pray, we meditate, we dig deep, we reach out, we rise up, we remember, we vision, we sit with the pain, we stay with the trouble, We wait, expectant. We light candles. We labor. We open to you and to one another and to the sacred mystery that is Emmanuel, God with us, love incarnate, divinity made flesh. May it be so. Amen.
Oh, come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here, until the child of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come thou day spring, come and cheer our spirits by your advent here. Love stir within the womb of night, and death's own shadows put to flight. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come, desire of nations bind, O people in one heart and mind. Make envy, strife, and quarrel cease, and fill the whole world with heaven's peace. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel.
The scripture this morning is from Mark chapter 13, verses 32 through 37 from the Inclusive Bible. But as for that day or hour, nobody knows it, neither the angels of heaven nor the only begotten, not one, but Abba God. Be constantly on the watch. Stay awake. You do not know when the appointed time will come. It's like people traveling abroad. They leave their home and put the workers in charge, each with a certain task. And those who watch at the front gate are ordered to stay on the alert. So stay alert. You do not know when the owner of the house is coming, whether at dusk, at midnight, when the cock crows, or at early dawn. Do not let the owner come suddenly and catch you asleep. What I say to you all. Stay alert.
The hope of God with us does not come as a guaranteed outcome or predetermined plan or promise of a happy ending. Hope cannot be imposed from on high. Hope cannot be commanded. The hope of God with us is courageous, risky, always unfolding, indeterminate. The hope of God with us is collective, liberating us from deadly complacency. Hope is gestating in the darkness. It comes unexpectedly. Hope invites our expectation and demands our participation. Prepare the way for hope with courage. May hope be birthed among, within, and through us this Advent season. O come, Emmanuel. What does it mean to stay alert? In our reading today, Jesus says, "What do I say to you all? Stay alert." Many translations turn it into stay awake. So what does that mean exactly? And what does it have to do with the season of Advent? What does staying alert have to do with Christmas? Well, I kind of think this passage is becoming more and more appropriate as each year passes, especially after the last 6 years or so. Whether it be due to the pandemic or the concerted effort by many in this country to remove the rights of women and the gay community, or the violence being inflicted on marginalized communities across the board, the most recent example, as Dan brought up, being the Club Q mass shooting that left 5 people dead. And because of this, many of us have been on high alert for quite some time now. And for many of us, our anxiety has become increasingly heightened as racist and homophobic and anti-Semitic hate speech has been regularly platformed by politicians and transformed into violence. And throw onto that pile over 1 million deaths in this country from COVID since the start of the pandemic. Deaths that our society has simply moved on from with barely any acknowledgement of, or discussion about, or any understanding of what loss of life on such a massive scale does to a community. And I would argue that despite the somewhat decent news coming out of the midterms, we are nonetheless a people sitting in darkness. Sitting in the darkness of hate and violence and greed. Sitting amidst the darkness and not knowing exactly what we should do to move forward. And that is Advent, right? Advent is sitting in and with the darkness. And on top of all that, with the supposed end of the worst of the pandemic, there is a cultural expectation among many to just get to fall back into the expectations we once had of working at a grueling pace under absolutely unacceptable conditions. Whether from parenting to school to maintaining our social connections to the holidays to church life. Simply put, people are tired. And staying awake, whether in the physical sense or even symbolically, is for many people an exhausting challenge right now. We are physically tired. We are emotionally tired. We are spiritually. I say that anyone who isn't tired or fatigued from the last several years might be experiencing a certain amount of privilege and disconnection from the struggles that surround us, because the level of care and concern that this era calls for is exhausting. And in the midst of that exhaustion, here on the first Sunday of Advent, Jesus seems to be telling us to stay alert. Now, I want to be careful here how this passage is approached, because we live in a society, we live under an economic system where very little value is placed on rest, where very little value is placed on self-care. And more often than not, we get rest and self-care wrong anyways, because we rest and self-care after we're exhausted. And that's not how it's supposed to work. And we actually deify the individual who works 60 hours a week. We put those people on a pedestal as something to be cherished and achieved. We promote the grind culture as something uniquely American that we should be proud of, not ashamed of. I remember years ago when George Bush was running for president and he was doing a town hall, and there was this random woman in the audience who was talking about that she has to work 3 jobs to pay, for food for the kids and to pay the rent. And George Bush, with a big smile on his face, put his arm around her and he goes, "That's a uniquely American story." And it's like, yes, it is a uniquely American story. That's the problem. We live in a world where very little slows down or turns off. And we rarely stop to ask what this kind of culture, what this kind of grind mentality does to us in body and in mind and in spirit. And so when Jesus here tells folks to stay alert, is he saying here that we need to be in a constant state of hyper-vigilance? A lot of people here think that Jesus was talking about his second coming. I do not. But even if he was talking about that, are we meant to live with constant attention to uncertainties and unknowns in a way that keeps us from ever really being able to fully rest? Is Advent a time of exhaustion, demanding a state of alertness shaped by 24-hour news and social media doom scrolling? Well, if we were to look around at our friends and family and neighbors, and some of us, if we were to be honest about ourselves, the answer would be, yeah, that's what we do. So many of us are worried about what could happen if we rest or disconnect for even a minute. We're stressed about everything that is beyond our control. And we're overwhelmed, and rightfully so, with so much loss and grief in the world. With friends, and as the Club Q shooting demonstrated, even though we're back in the bars socializing with friends, we can never completely let our guard down. We are alert and we are exhausted. And maybe that's our Advent message today. Maybe what we need to be alert to, maybe what we need to become awake to is our exhaustion. Is it possible in our hypervigilance around everything else that we've actually fallen asleep to our mental and emotional and our spiritual needs? In our alertness to the news and our democracy hanging on by a thread and the steady flow of mass shootings, is it possible that we have fallen asleep to the mere possibility of kingdom come? Is it possible that we become over alert to the wrong things? Now, don't get me wrong here. I am not saying that we should not be attuned to world events and injustice or just to bury our heads in the sand. Not even close. But can we be alert and awake in a way that resists destructive exhaustion? Can we practice collective solidarity that is not a restless hypervigilance? Can we hold loss and struggle and anxiety in a community and in a nation while also pacing ourselves through periods of injustice and oppression? Because today's text from Mark reminds us that we don't know when kingdom come will happen. Next week, 10 years from now, ever? And the Bible is filled with people asking this very same thing. The Psalms regularly remind us that we aren't the only ones who have been wondering where kingdom come is and when the heck it'll get here. The psalmist writes this: "How much longer will you fume while your people pray? You fed us on the bread of tears and made us drink our tears in such measure. And now you let our neighbors ridicule us and our enemies treat us with scorn." And so I would suggest that this Advent is about being alert to pacing ourselves. It's about being awake and alert to the exhaustion and frustration and anxiety that could distract us from the work of kingdom come. That could prevent us from showing up for each other because we're just too tired to show up anymore. That could so overwhelm us physically and emotionally and spiritually that we fail to see the rhythm of the divine in our life. A rhythm that is about compassion and harmony and balance versus the capitalistic ideal of exhaustion for profit or exhaustion for survival. A rhythm where rest, true rest, is not a luxury. It's not laziness. Rest is a right. Rest is a need. It's a requirement for all of us and for creation. One of the most amazing things I think we saw during the pandemic when we were all, well, not all, but a lot of us were isolating, was how nature started taking itself back. Rest for nature was paying dividends because that's what rest does. And just as the psalmist writes, how much longer, we ask the same. We ask for ourselves, we ask for the sick, for the overworked, for the undocumented immigrant separated from their child, for the environment, for the mother and father of the latest Black child slain by authorities, for our indigenous brethren, for the transgender community, for those whose safe spaces are shattered by hate and bullets. We are waiting for justice to come. And so we stay alert and awake for a future free from oppression. We do not know the day or the hour when those scales will finally tip, when the change of seasons will come, when the end of a destructive era will be the beginning of something new. But we wait. We actively wait with hope. And this is our Advent. May it be so.
Bring your worry, grief and pain, every cause you have for shame, lay it all down, lay it all down. When your cares have buried you and there's nothing left to do, lay it all down, lay it all down at the feet of Jesus. At the feet of Jesus. carried on, but your heart was tired. Feared the worst and felt the fire. Lay it all down. Lay it all down. Filled with all those anxious thoughts, and all your doubts became your guide. Lay it all down. Lay it all down at the feet of Jesus. At the feet of Jesus. Lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down. Lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down. Lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down. At the feet of Jesus. At the feet of Jesus. When we've given up on better days, there are memories we can't erase. Lay it all down. Lay it all down. When we've come to fear what we can't explain, there's nothing here that can ease the pain. Lay it all down. Lay it all down at the feet of Jesus. At the feet of Jesus. Lay it all down. 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 Lay it all down at the feet of Jesus. Yeah, at the feet of Jesus. Lay it all down. 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 Lay it all down at the feet of Jesus. At the feet of Jesus. Here we find healing at the feet of Jesus. Here we find our rest at the feet of Jesus.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, we're going to move into a time of prayer concerns, meditation, celebrations, what we do every week. And at the after each request or each statement, we will say, the Divine Spirit hears our prayers.
For all the people at the World Cup in Qatar, because their freedom of expression has been threatened, and even wearing T-shirts, they're not allowed to wear T-shirts. For all the people and concerns of safety.
And also, aside from the issues surrounding freedom of expression at World Cup, we also have Iranian women who are being arrested in droves for demanding their individual rights and freedoms as well. And that is looking like it could turn, it's bad as it is, but it's looking like it could turn even worse if something doesn't change. So lifting all these up. The divine spirit hears our prayers.
Prayers for all the refugees at all the borders and all of those who are escaping any kind of economic and violence, those lost at sea during their journey.
And also to keep in mind, we are in the season of undocumented immigrants crossing borders in order to stay alive. Jesus, the infant Jesus and his parents, narratively, were undocumented immigrants crossing over into Egypt and crossing back again. And yet we live in a society that is supposedly a Christian society that simply spits and turns their back on undocumented immigrants from elsewhere. So for the current immigration issue, that isn't just about a one-time thing, but it's just a constant issue within our country, the divine spirit hears our prayers.
Presence is all I'm longing for, here in the secret place. Nearness is all I'm waiting for, here in the quiet place. The secret place, my soul waits for you alone, just like the watchmen wait for dawn. And here I finally found the place where we'll meet, Lord, face to face. I finally found where I belong. I finally found where I belong. In your presence, I finally found where I belong. Just to be with you, to be with you. I finally found where I belong. I finally found where I belong. In your presence, I finally found where I belong. Just to be with you. Your presence is all I am longing for, here in the secret place. Your nearness is all I'm waiting for, here in the quiet place, here in the secret place. My soul waits for you alone, just like the watchmen wait for dawn. Here I finally found the place where we'll meet, Lord, face to face. I finally found where I belong. I finally found where I belong. In your presence, I finally found where I belong. Just to be with you, to be with you. I finally found where I belong. I finally found where I belong. In your presence, I finally found where I belong. Just to be with you, yeah. Where I am my beloved's and he is mine. So I come into your presence and take delight in you. I take delight in you. Where I am my beloved's and he is mine. So I come into your presence and take delight in you. I take delight in you. I 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 delight. presence, God, I find my rest. Here in your presence, God. Here in your presence, God, I find my rest. Here in your presence, God. Sing that one more time. Here in your presence, God, I find my rest. Here in your presence, God.
We do not know the day nor the hour, but we know that the divine will usher in a new age. The exiled will be brought home, the captives set free, the hungry set before a feast. To make this so, we collectively labor. We rest, we resist, we dream, we rest some more. These are our Advent prayers. With faith, they will be heard. So go in peace. Have a wonderful week. Thank you all very much.